flag football team?
An official flag, like an IHSA flag football team.
By the way, we were not recording. I was just asking generally.
Oh, we're doing Late Night with the Devil.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a flag football team. Like
Yeah,
official?
An official flag football team. It's an IHSA thing.
An official flag football team.
Yeah.
That sounds very lame.
It's a girls' school.
Is it a... Wait.
Rosary.
Oh, Rosary. I thought you said my school.
No, my former school.
Gotcha,
My
gotcha.
former school, yeah. Has a flag football team. And on a completely unrelated note, I have enjoyed the first 3 episodes of Rings of Power.
I have not seen... I haven't even finished season 1.
You know...
I got 2 episodes, and I'm like, I don't know that I want to go back and sit through 2.5 hours.
It is kind of the same level of boring as season 1.
You're not making the hard...
I'm not making the case. I think this is where actual streaming, if this show was forced into week-by-week release, and then it had to arrange episodes where, like, so there's the 3 episodes at the beginning, each follow a different set of characters.
Mm-hmm.
And there's plenty of characters that you see in episode 1 that you don't see for episodes 2 or 3, that I'm like, I feel like if it was week to week, then it couldn't get away with this bullshit.
Yeah.
So... format, I think, hurts it a little bit. But the Sauron stuff is intriguing.
All right. Well, we're not here to talk about that.
No!
We're here to talk about Late Night with the Devil.
We're here
welcome to the podcast, everybody.
Yes.
You know, one thing I realized, listening back to our podcast episodes, is that, A, I say a lot and like a lot.
I say yeah. I say yeah.
So I'm going to try to be conscious of that. But... we usually don't introduce the show until the very end. So
of what we're watching.
Here's your introduction to the Cine-Scoots movie show. Welcome
to this. Yes, we're bad
where we
hospitality.
talk about movies and TV shows.
Exactly.
Yeah.
We're the first in our field to come up with this concept.
No one ever does it.
No one.
No one's as good as us.
Yeah. There's not a million other hours of content on there.
Content.
Saying the same thing.
But anyway, we're here to talk about Late Night with the Devil, which is a movie that I saw quite a while ago.
It came out 5 months ago, I think.
It came out around our spring break time, like March-ish.
Which is funny, because it's a horror movie, but it's like blatantly a Halloween movie.
Yeah. I mean, the movie is set on Halloween night, right?
Yeah.
I think this is one of those movies that fits perfectly, like if you're watching a movie marathon with your homies on Halloween time and you just want to watch something in the background. Yes, I think this movie benefits like if you pay attention, but like if you're kind of just like goofing and you're watching a movie with friends, this is also a really good time.
I agree. 93 minutes.
Yeah, a
with
tight
credits.
90 minutes,
Yep.
Which I think helps too with the format of the movie because it is you watching a late night episode. It cannot be longer than this.
It's an efficiently run format.
Yeah, I think even when you take out credits, which are not long, you take out the comically large amount of production, like logos.
Yes.
There's 9 production cards.
Yeah, there
in
are.
this fucking movie.
That was something to behold.
I remember watching this movie the first time in theaters, and it gets to like 3, and people are like, "Wait a minute." And then it gets to like 4 and 5, and people go, "Wait, this has to be it, right?" And it keeps going, and by the end, people are laughing.
I want to say Alien also had a fuck ton.
Maybe only a few though, but Alien was pretty tightly produced by primarily Disney.
So there was a Simpsons episode that made a joke about this, or it was either Simpsons or Family Guy, or it's showing a theater. I think you do see the 10 production logos.
Oh, yeah.
And there was a movie that we saw recently that I was like, Jesus Christ, this is beyond parody. This amount of production logos.
I think this beats it. This has so many productions. Some of them are really good.
It takes a village.
It does. Well, and that's kind of the thing. This movie is so small budget. It really was kind of like cobbled together.
Yeah.
By just a bunch of people.
Yeah.
Like even what is this guy's name? David Dastmalchian. He's the guy who plays Jack. He's one of the producers too. He put his money in this too.
Oh wow.
So everybody is.
Hope he didn't put his money in Boogeyman.
Listen, man. No, that one's more. But even in Boogeyman, he was good.
He was good.
He's good. I think he's good
all around.
Yeah. Every time I see him in something, I'm like, I at least know he's gonna give it.
Do you think this is his like first movie that you've seen where he's not a character actor?
I mean, even here, I would say Jack Delroy's the character.
Yeah.
Like he's a type,
Yeah.
right? And it's the late night guy. So he's playing this.
He's
type.
late night guy, but he's not Polka Dot Man in this movie.
No,
Yeah.
no.
He's very much off the spectrum.
Is that what that means now?
I think that's what that means.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
But I think this movie is very effective at like capturing what it's like to watch an episode of like a random episode of Conan.
As someone who's never seen a full episode of any late night show,
Are you serious?
I agree with you.
Damn.
I actually really hate most interview segments.
Yeah, I never watched the interviews.
Yeah.
So like back when I used to be in college was around the time that Conan came back.
Mm-hmm.
And that was a huge deal because it was during the big war he had with
Jay Leno
and
NBC.
Right? Yep. I don't know the big details of it. All I know is that Jay had a spot. It was given to Conan
And taken.
and then he came back and was like, "No, just kidding, it's mine."
Exactly.
And Conan got fucked.
Correct.
But then he went to TBS. He had a huge hit show with
Big
Conan.
success. Yes.
That was the one that I watched religiously. I actually went to a taping of Conan in Chicago.
That's cool.
The guests were Adam Sandler and T.J. Miller
The Daily Show was just here for the
the DNC.
The DNC, yes.
But they were not at the Chicago theater.
TJ Miller was a guest at your Conan thing.
Yeah,
Ooh.
this was back.
This was back before.
Before-
He's a bad guy, right? I'm
he's-
forgetting my.
He's a piece of shit.
Okay.
I think it was always known that he was kind of a piece of shit.
Yes.
But I don't think it was until like he got into beef with Ryan Reynolds that people were like, "Oh,
Fuck him.
you're like an actual piece of shit."
Gotcha.
But anyway, as someone who watched a lot of late night, I think this really does hit a lot of those feelings that you get watching, like the monologue, some of the nuances that like they have between just him and his like sidekick guy, which I think is similar to like with Conan and Andy.
Right.
Like they just banter back and forth. Apparently, like a lot of that was ad-libbed, which it is in the movie, which is kind of how it is in these settings. So it comes across as very natural.
I would imagine this movie helps you better appreciate the stress of live TV.
Yeah.
I think the structure for this movie is the biggest thing it has going for it. And I don't say that to poo-poo on the movie. I just think that the fact that it was so able to perfectly capture that feeling of a late night show is what makes this movie stand out for me.
Very good.
Shall I read the synopsis?
Sure, give us a brief synopsis before we go into spoilers.
And it is brief. A live television broadcast in 1977 goes horribly wrong, unleashing evil into the nation's living rooms.
Yeah, and I think so. The way the movie kind of moves along, I think it's paced very well, where you're interested in what's happening at the time, but it's also not like boring.
Yes.
So then, as the escalation is happening, you are feeling like this does make sense.
This movie also does, I'm going to sound big dumb right now, but it does enough setup at the beginning where you do have to take one or two, like if you're walking into this movie like stone cold, you're like, is this based on a true story or inspired by it? And it's not, right?
Yeah.
But it does enough of setting the scene and making it self-grounded in that period of history where you're like, am I learning about something that... Because Javi, after I learned about the Great Boston Molasses disaster, like my ability, my ability to easily suss out bullshit was hindered somewhat. So
All right, so here's the thing. Even though this movie is not based on real events,
Yeah.
it does take a lot of inspiration from real things, right?
Correct.
This movie is very, very prominently like late 70s, I
Late
believe,
70s.
right? Late 70s.
The Warrens are referenced.
The Warrens are referenced.
Johnny Carson is a big player in the movie, even though he never appears.
Yeah, I mean, he's like the the elephant in the room
Yeah,
throughout the entire movie.
You know those like charts that have recently become popular, where like for characters per show, and one of them is like no screen time but lots of plot relevance.
Yeah.
Johnny Carson.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Because this whole event is set into motion because Jack, as a late night host, obviously everybody wants to be the top guy.
Right.
Unfortunately, not everybody
can. There's only one spot.
There's only one spot, and a lot of the times it feels like people kind of flip back and forth. Like sometimes it's this guy, sometimes it's this guy.
Yeah.
But in this time, it was
Johnny Carson.
It was Johnny Carson.
Yeah.
Right. Like everybody knows the references. Even if you don't know who the fuck he is, like everybody's heard "Here's Johnny."
Yeah.
Right. Whether it's from the actual show,
The Shining,
or from The Shining,
right,
or some offhand reference. Right.
Yeah.
So everybody at least has that. But Jack is always chasing that dragon, right? He never gets it. He's always at like 2. Right? I think even at one point in the movie, something like tragic happens and it's like, he was 1 point behind.
Yeah.
So like, even on his worst time, he cannot catch a break, right?
Yeah.
And I think having all of those things come into this movie really does give it that this could be real thing.
Yep.
Like having your late night band playing with them.
Yeah,
like,
frequently
everybody has like their band.
Yeah.
You have the guy who comes in and does his cold readings into the room. Like we have the late night, the Long Island medium, right?
Yep. You got the dysfunction and like the set producer and like, all right, like why are these props here? Right, like that all feels very authentic.
Very authentic.
Yeah, it feels legit.
And also with this time, this is set in like that rise of the Satanic Panic, which doesn't hit like peak until like the 80s.
Yes.
But it is around this time, like it's the end of, well, it's like during the whole issue with like the war and, you know, the hippies. And I think there's like references to Nixon in this at some point. So they talk about Jimmy Carter.
So yes, they do talk about Jimmy Carter. On the guy who leads the satanic cult.
Yes,
is very much an Aleister Crowley inspired figure.
He was inspired by, I have it here, Anton LaVey.
Anton LaVey.
Yeah,
yes.
Who is another? Is he the founder of the Church of Satan, or is he just another cult leader?
I can't remember between him and Aleister Crowley who came first. Mm-hmm. Or who did more, but those are the two. They both are Church of Satan people.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
So like, we have this guy here in this movie, right? He is that character in this. There's even those segments they show at the very beginning where they're basically setting the scene, which I think they have to, because the actual movie itself is so self-contained.
Yeah.
Right. We get Jack's backstory.
We get it pretty quickly. Yeah.
Which I think it's good. It is a lot of exposition, but it doesn't run into that like exposition dump.
No, and it sets the pace. It tells us what we need to know in an efficient period of time, which is good for for a movie that needs to feel like it's max 90 minutes.
Yeah, we learned very early on that his wife died. Mm-hmm. Not mysteriously, but strangely of like lung cancer. She never smoked,
yes.
Right? So that's already like put a pin in that type of thing. Like something happened. Even when she was on the show, he cannot beat Johnny Carson.
There's so I want to speak a little bit more. 2 things about the time period. One about time period, one about genre. First thing about the time period is today in class, my 7th graders are writing like a time travel piece. Mm-hmm. And then for one of our examples, one of them suggested the 1980s for my model. And then like we had to think of things from the 1980s. And in my brain, I'm like, Satanic Panic. And I didn't say that, obviously. But I was like, these 13-year-olds don't know that. Number one. Number 2, we talked on the show before about how there's this, we believe, illegitimate critique where people are like, there's too many religious horror movies, which we disagree that there's too many religious horror movies. I'm interested in the fact that I feel like I've seen, so this Long Legs are both Satanic Panic movies. Mm-hmm. Both are like Satanic Panic Real, actually, movies. And then Black Phone is not Satanic Panic, but it's Stranger Danger.
Stranger Danger.
And those things coincided and dovetailed. So I think it is interesting that I'm at least noticing a number of like that shit that was scary in the 80s, real actually. Like be afraid. I think that's interesting that I've seen so many.
Yes, it is interesting, but I also think I kind of like that.
I'm not saying I dislike it.
Because it's always like, you know how sometimes people talk about the weird conspiracies they have?
Yeah.
Where they're like, oh, jet fuel can't melt steel beams.
Right.
I'm like, what if they make a movie about that actually being right?
Well, we've also talked about the show about movies that, like, if you showed them early on in, like, 2021... that would very much invigorate the Robert F. Kennedy crowd. So yeah, we haven't seen the jet fuel, but we've seen like the what if vaccines bad?
What if vaccines made you have alien baby?
And this is also an Illuminati movie.
Yeah.
Yeah, we forgot to talk about the Illuminati.
So I'm really kind of liking this, and like you mentioned, yes, it is technically a religious horror to a certain extent, not in the like religion good to save the day
right
versus evil in the essence of like there is a devil, right? So like I do like that in here too. It is in that vein. It's like it falls under the umbrella of religious horror without it being like a Warren's movie, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct.
I do also like that they set up this ominous like group, the Grove. Mm-hmm. Which again is also inspired by a real thing called the Bohemian Club, which is in the Bohemian Grove, which is like a big
it's basically the
gentleman's club.
Yeah.
Which is funny that they call it a gentleman's club, but when I think of that, I think of like a titty bar.
Yeah. A dance studio.
Yeah, but this is just a bunch of dudes hanging out doing dude shit.
Yes.
So
with some arcane
what the whole so we start the show here with him introducing his like Long Island medium guy. It's this he's ambiguously like
Christu.
Yeah.
It's funny he says C for yes. The subtitles say Middle Eastern accent.
Yeah, so it's
Christu is also a Greek name. So I don't know what he is.
I think he's just ambiguously cast. Then also there is something that happens later in his scene where his accent drops. So it's clearly
an act,
right? Yeah. So it just kind of piles on the idea that he is end of the day a charlatan.
Yeah.
But then what is happening to him is real, right? Because he's doing a cold read.
Right.
He kind of bombs at first.
Yeah.
Because he's like, oh, I'm getting a name. And this guy goes, oh, me. He goes, oh, did your wife leave you? Well, yeah, she's dating my instructor or whatever.
Yeah.
So like this dude who's the worst kind of person to have at a comedy show, I think.
Yes.
Is just kind of like causing this guy to tank. Then he does find a mark, which feels kind of shitty.
The kid who committed suicide
with the mom and the daughter. And it's just like, it sucks because you know people are like this.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, some people go, well, yeah, we're giving people closure. But some people are like, no, we are just taking advantage of gullible people.
I don't know to what extent I would call that closure. I mean, I can't speak for the people
like a lot of the people who do this, that's what they say. Like, oh, we are giving people closure. We are letting them talk to their deceased loved ones again.
Right.
And I don't know to what extent I could ever possibly believe that.
Same.
Because to me, it always just feels kind of gross.
Yeah.
And that's this scene, like, to a T.
Yeah.
Because even later on, we have a character who kind of like digs deeper into this. But this is where we get Christus having like a freak out. He starts like his nose starts bleeding, I believe. His eyes roll back.
Yep.
And then he starts shouting that there's someone named Minnie.
Minnie in the room.
And she's looking for a married man, an unmarried man wearing a wedding ring.
Yep.
Right, which we find out is
Jack.
Is Jack. Right. His wife is dead, so he's therefore unmarried.
Yep.
And he still wears his ring. Minnie is a pet name. So right here from the very beginning, we're starting to get this is now kind of specifically going after Jack.
And then projectile vomit.
And projectile vomit.
Yes.
This is after we introduced Carmichael Haig, who I love. I love how much of a dick he is.
I do too.
But also at the same time, like he didn't do anything wrong.
This is a movie where I think the movie wants us to read him as an asshole.
But he's kind of
and
right.
he is he is kind of an asshole, but I do think he's kind of right. And also in the vein of like this being, look, if we were worried about like we're jumping ahead.
Yeah.
If we were worrying about the feelings of this young possessed girl, then I'm sorry. Then we would not have brought her onto the television set.
No, for sure.
So like
yeah. So all right. So here's the thing about Carmichael. Carmichael is the type of person that, yes, he might be right, but the way he goes about it is so pretentiously dickish.
Right.
That you are kind of compelled to, like, not want him to be right.
Yeah.
And I think that's what this is.
It is supposed to read very, like, our atheism.
Yes. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And that's what it is, right? He is a former magician.
Yeah.
I guess he is a parallel to... James Randi, who is also a guy who used to do all this type of stuff and then devoted his life to like skepticism and debunking. Kind of similar to like Penn and Teller, where they're like, hey, try to trick us. We know that this is bullshit.
Yes.
But try to pull a fast one on us.
Yeah.
And that's his thing. And just like in real life, he is offering a cash reward
for anyone who
can prove any sort of supernatural thing, right? And I believe up until he died, like he never cashed anything because nobody could prove to him stuff.
His ending is fascinating, and I want to talk about that in detail when we get there.
For sure.
Yeah.
So he's talking about like how he's doing this. He talks to the lady. He says, "Hey, did anybody talk to you in the lobby?"
Right.
And the lady goes, "Yeah, somebody was asking me questions." And he's like, "This motherfucker."
Yeah.
But I love they're talking about everything that's happening. They're introducing, I think, Lily, and then you just hear the siren in the background.
Yeah.
That's just basically taking Christu away.
Right.
We later find out that he dies.
Yeah, off screen.
He dies off screen.
After the big projectile vomit.
After the disgustingly kind of gross looking CG vomit.
And then I do think so. I think this is one of those things that I think this is where the movie does undercut his character to the point where like I think your read of him as a dick kind of like wins out. Because at least on my screen, that projectile vomit looked like big and black, like multiple feet long.
Yeah.
And then he was like, like he had his own rational explanation.
Yeah.
But I'm like, I don't know, dude. Like when I see like a fucking boa constrictor like get vomited out of somebody's mouth, I think that eclipses rational explanation. He's in this, and he's in a scenario where there's just such extreme. Like
you would at least be like, I hope he's okay.
Yeah.
Like that didn't look right. It may not be supernatural, but maybe something is wrong.
Something went wrong.
Maybe he ate something bad at craft table or something.
Yeah.
One of the funniest things that also kind of points out how much of a dick he is. He's like, "Oh, give me my spare jacket."
Right.
He gets a second jacket.
Yeah.
Which is I just thought it was kind of funny because like sometimes not even the host has like a change of clothes in an episode when something goes wrong.
Yeah.
So he's just like, he's that level of pretentiousness.
Yeah. He's like, that was given to me by blah, blah, blah. Like, I forget who gave him the jacket.
Oh, yeah. He mentioned someone. I forgot about that. I do think the way, like I said, the way he goes about trying to disprove things, it comes off like a dick, but I do think it is kind of a point towards him that he is that well versed into like this world of like illusion,
right?
That he's able to kind of be like, oh, this is what this is how you are doing this is how I would do this if I was trying to trick someone.
So have you heard of there's a YouTube channel I like called the Alt-Right Playbook, which is just like it's like far leftist guy, but he covers like,
I believe he's the one who has a video about like how they radicalized normies.
That him? That's him. He has a great one that I think is really unsung. It's called like, it's not called this, but it's like it's called like chickens didn't evolve from dinosaurs or something, where conspiracy types will confidently be. It's easier to tell dangerous lies than it is to tell complicated truths, because like some things are just so complex and hard to explain that you can't make it make sense within like 2-minute bullet points, right? So he goes over the story about like talking to a hardcore creationist about evolution, and the creationist will be like, chickens didn't come from no dinosaurs. And then you'll be like, actually, if you look at fossils and vestigial records and blah, 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 and then you go through like the thing that makes sense. And then the creationist will be like, chickens didn't come from no dinosaurs, right? Because it's that like is quick, digestible, easy to understand.
Yeah.
Right? So when you're, similarly, like when you're debunking like the fraudulent, like psychic, like crowd. I mean, some of what they're able to do is like very impressive.
Oh, it's absolutely impressive.
But like you have to you have to have an abundance of evidence. You have to like be able to explain psychological phenomenon. Like you can't help but sound either like a dick or like you're reaching for evidence when you're explaining how these guys are able to fool people, because their system is just so complex. It's much easier to say like some things are beyond our understanding than it is to say like actually what they do is they look for commonalities and they'll use techniques like fishing for questions and blah 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 blah.
Yeah.
Right. So his task, even if it sounds dickish, is monumental.
Oh, for sure.
Yes.
And people want to believe in like this crazy shit.
Yeah.
Right? Like you said, sometimes it's easier to believe the unbelievable than to like look for the logic in things, right?
And yet Carmichael's system of belief, which we'll talk about when we get there, actually does. I think this is my favorite part of the movie, his last words, because you find out at the end that he does have some sort of system of belief.
He's a man of his word. I'll just say that.
He's a man of his word, but like quick to commit.
Hey!
Yeah.
Again, man of his word. If you show him proof, he'll believe it. But anyway, so this is where we are introduced to like our main attraction, which is Lily and June. June is the writer. She's the doctor.
Yep.
She's a parapsychologist.
By the way, in the opening, in the opening credits for the show, where they go over like tonight, like blah 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 blah, like our musical guest. The way they not gloss over this, but just make this like fit in like to every other thing on the itinerary. It's like tonight, the
author
Christu,
of Conversations with the Devil,
and then Carmichael, and then the author of Conversations with the Devil, followed by the long medium or whatever her name is.
Oh my God, what's her name?
And then our annual parade of costumes. Like, like it did such a good job of making it seem like just another bullet point on the list.
Yeah,
I love that. Anyway, but then June and Lily and June, yes.
Lily and June,
right?
They get introduced, and it's this whole thing where I love just how from the very beginning this girl ain't right.
Yeah,
she is. Every time the camera is on her, she is staring daggers at that camera.
Yeah,
it's almost like, so when you watch a show, or when you are in the stage of a show and you're looking at the camera, I don't know how familiar you are with how this works. Like the cameras have a number.
I'm on TV all the time.
No, but have you seen like a taping of it?
There's also it's interesting when he has his like visions at the end. The camera that he looks into is number 2.
Ooh.
Yes.
Yeah.
Anyway.
But anyway, so like there's supposed to be a light that lights up usually, right? Yeah. And that's what tells you, okay, which camera is the one that's currently live on, right? Yeah. But a lot of the times people still see that and they will not look at the camera because they're having a conversation with people. You want it to be, you don't want to just like spike the camera the whole time.
Right.
Right. But it's like every time the camera is on, she looks directly at is looking at you, the audience, watching her. And it's a very like, kind of like
unsettling?
It's unsettling, but it's also like very minimal, but it's very effective in just how much that does for me.
I think it's amplified in the sense that no one on the stage, to my recollection, ever really seems to notice. And then if they do, maybe it's very minimal. But like everyone on stage is still doing their thing.
Yeah.
And then you, the audience, are the only ones that see like, this bitch be staring.
She is. Yeah. And it's, I love her performance as this like weird girl who could be ditzy,
Yeah.
maybe a little lightheaded, but not necessarily malicious.
It's unambiguous. Not unambiguous. It is ambiguous as to like what her intentions are.
Yeah. Which I know is kind of a point of contention with people. Like, how much is she aware? Oh, how much of this actually is Lily? How much is this Abraxas and or one of these lesser demons? Because they mention, right? They say
Dr. June thinks that this is not Abraxas.
Abraxas. Which, again, I don't know.
And I think also, given our current media landscape, I don't know to what extent like this film took inspiration from The Killing Joke, but for me, like, and I'm not even a big fan of that comic or the Joker movie, but anytime I hear like, a talk show and disaster happens within it, I think Killing Joke. And in The Killing Joke, like, the Joker goes into, that talk show very intent on, like, killing everybody.
Mm-hmm.
So here, like, I walked into this being like, this girl's like walking in with a plan. But then as the evening goes on, that to me at least became less and less clear. Like, I don't know to what extent like this girl or this demon is actually like trying to pull shit tonight.
Yeah.
And that made the whole situation more unpredictable and more scary for me.
There's a scene, so this is after the first introduction. They talk about Lily's situation where she was bred specifically for sacrifice.
Yeah.
I believe they say like at 13 she's supposed to be sacrificed. They save her at 10. Now she's 13.
Yeah.
So this is prime time for the picking here.
Yeah.
For this little girl. But they cut to commercials. And by the way, anytime we cut to commercial or like the broadcast is interrupted, we get these back, like behind the scenes, no longer
The black and white
and white shots, right? Where they're talking about like the ratings are doing good, like let's keep doing this shit.
Yeah.
The rest of the crew is scared because shit's like acting weird.
Yeah.
So like we get a nice look into this is not just happening in front of the camera, like this is affecting
The show.
the whole show, right? But in that section where they go into break after introducing Lily, she says, Jack says something along the lines of, "Oh, this is so and so. She's here to make us look pretty."
Yeah.
And Lily turns to Jack. He's walking away, and she says, "Don't I already look pretty, Jack?" And it is not Lily's voice.
Yeah.
It is Madeline's voice.
Yeah.
So this is where I think we start to see more of that idea that Lily is just possessed the entire time. Like, this is not a Mr. Wriggles thing. This is he is there the entire time.
Yeah.
And he is actively fucking with Jack, obviously, at the beginning with the Christu thing. And now with the background stuff too, right? Scaring the cast and crew. And now he is again like taunting him, like making him feel this guilt because something happened with Madeline that he is inadvertently responsible for.
So briefly jumping forward to the summons.
Sure.
When Mr. Wriggles is summoned in front of the audience, there's the scene where like he makes June or Lily look like towards the audience. And he's like, "Where am I? Like, who are all these people?" Do you read that as that's just like a total lie and deception by the demon?
Oh, for sure.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, because also he says something along the lines of Abraxas is like a demon of like trickery.
Yeah.
Right? Hence the abracadabra. He makes that. Carmichael makes that comment.
That comment, right.
So I just think it is Abraxas, not even a lesser underling of him. I just read this as it is him. This is how he's going to be unleashed.
Right.
And he is using this deception of this little girl, of this show, to kind of spread himself.
Yeah.
That's how I read it.
Yeah.
Because it does make sense. Like, it's not... Just to kind of like move a little bit forward. So yes, they do this whole thing. They see her levitate on the chair. Carmichael is not convinced. He says, "You're just doing like full on like mass hypnosis, right?" He does a pretty cool look at the watch, and the watch turns into a spiral. And blah blah blah. And he hypnotizes Gus. Poor Gus.
Dude, poor Gus is what I was saying all throughout that
Poor
movie.
Gus did not
Yeah.
deserve any of what happens to him.
No, Gus was always trying to be a voice of reason.
Yeah, he was like, "Hey, this is not a good idea."
Yeah, Gus is the Lenny of this.
He gets like he hates worms. He
Right.
gets tricked into thinking worms are coming out of his guts and his eye, which is
Yeah.
a nasty effect, by the way.
Yeah,
Having that worm.
that got me in this, like, once the hypnosis thing was happening and then like the worms started happening, I was like, is it Braxis fucking with everybody now?
Thanos, a gullible. Thanos, part of the gullible crowd.
I'm part of the gullible crowd. Yeah. I was hypnotized.
I love the wink to the camera that Carmichael does, where he's like, "Oh no, this is like what's happening," and he turns to the camera, and he winks,
Yeah.
and it's just like, he's playing this up, right?
Right.
Which I think is very on brand for a character like
Like
his.
him. Yeah.
Which then gives after this whole thing happens, they play back the video,
Right.
shows everybody what really happened. It's all bullshit.
Yeah.
Lily has a great idea of, well, if that's fake and that's what we did,
Show the tape.
right?
Yeah.
And man, I will say probably my least favorite part of the movie is this, where they cut to this, they're watching this, we are seeing like the spooky shit happening, and then they're like, "Ooh, let's go back. There's something in the screen," and the whole time I'm like, it's the girl turning into a spooky face,
Right.
and then you look behind Jack, and it's the ugliest looking
Oh.
CGI ghost. It does not look good.
The effects in this movie are something else. At some point, I do think I enjoy it, but that was
It's probably the worst.
that looked like it was an
thing,
effect from 1977.
for sure.
Yeah.
Which the funny thing is, because like you have the effect of like the worms coming out of Gus like in the stomach and the eye, and that looks pretty cool as
Yeah.
a practical effect. But then just having this like glowy force ghost looking ass
Yeah,
behind Jack does not
it
not do it for me.
it looks rather potato.
It looks very potato. I know they don't have a big budget.
Right.
This is a very, very small budget movie. I get it. But man, of all the things to not only do in your movie, but then point out to be like, ooh, look at this.
Right.
I think that was probably the worst. You do see Madeline in the background in a few shots in this movie. Like I've seen this movie 3 times, and I've been able to catch her a couple times, like in reflections or in the background of something. So there is a way to have her be in the movie and still be scary and not have to look like potato
Yeah.
force ghost. It's the only thing I can think of, man. It looks like a force ghost.
I think this is where the movies. So I really liked this movie. I don't think I fully loved this movie, and I think for me was the scariest visuals were the ones that I saw in the trailer, where you see and hear like Lily's transformation.
Mm-hmm.
B, when the movie goes out with its like full magic, it's just so funny looking.
Yeah.
That I think it undercuts.
It does.
Yeah, it's creative.
It's creative.
It is very creative.
So funny enough, you mentioned
Yeah.
that. So after this happens, then like everything starts to kind of just go crazy.
Yeah.
And Lily full on like starts like smoking, and like lightning starts to like come out of her.
Burst Athena from her head.
Her head bursts open, which looks goofy.
Right.
Because then it looks like she's being pulled up by the lightning.
Yeah.
Again, looks very goofy, but there's something that kind of like, I'm like, all right, this looks cheesy, but
It reminds me of
fun.
Ghostbusters.
It does.
Yeah.
Yeah, with the beams.
With the beams.
It does.
It reminds me of like a Saturday morning Power Rangers show. Like it is that level of quality of special effect.
It is, and to be fair, I guess the movie has that level of budget.
Yeah. But it certainly does. To me, it does undercut some level of scariness.
Yes, yeah, that's the thing. It really does undercut the actual scariness of it.
Yeah.
I do think the scenes, like you mentioned, where the scares are most effective are her transformation. I think her makeup in that looks really,
great.
really good.
Yeah.
because I think it's just so simple.
And that's all nothing we've seen before, right? It's like you put the scars on the girl, you distort the face, you add the demon voice.
Yep.
It fucking works
Yeah.
every time.
Every single time,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So when you start adding these special effects, like
Right.
the lightning, the head splitting open, I think that's where you start to get into more, do you have the budget for this territory?
And yet it does make and yet part of me is glad the film did it because it does make it feel like it stands out. So for example, whatever was the last Conjuring or Annabelle movie we saw together in theaters, I was like, man, that whole third act fucking feels like an Avengers movie in a bad way, right? Whereas if the CGI was better, then I wonder if it would have gone into that route. But I do think that, like, I certainly walked away from that movie being like, that was unique. Right?
Yeah.
In all the good senses of the world, like that movie is different from many, many things that I've seen before.
Yeah, exactly, and that really does make this movie stand out on its own. Yeah. There's other movies that play into the trope of like a mundane thing and demon.
Right.
In this case, a mundane thing just happens to be a late night show.
Yeah.
Right, but it's not. It is able to kind of overcome its tropiness by having these quirky things.
Yeah.
Which I think is really,
and then
really
also
good for the movie.
And then also leaning into the mundane thing.
Yeah. After this is where Gus got. Poor Gus.
Poor
Again, Gus did nothing wrong.
Dies two times in this movie.
Yeah. He gets his head twisted, which is a reference to The Exorcist, because he does tell Carmichael, he was like, just don't twist my head around.
My wife likes me with my head on my shoulders.
With my head on my shoulders, and he gets his head twisted. June gets like her throat slit by her necklace.
Does Gus try to do Power of Christ Compelled You on June?
I believe so. Because June has a different symbol. I can't remember.
Different
what it
symbol.
is.
She starts speaking to the demon in like Latin, but it's not like biblical stuff. It's like demon stuff.
Yeah.
And she has her different symbol, and then she gets got.
And then Carmichael whips out that check because he's like, baby, you got me.
He's not just like, baby, you got me, but he's like, Prince of Darkness, I will serve you.
I will serve you right. He was looking.
And that's where
he was looking for a master.
That's not even that. Yes, with him. And I think this is where, once again, like, he gets into the more unlikable camp, where for him it wasn't even like, game got game at the end. It's just like, for him, it was, I believe it, and also like, looking for a master. Like,
yes, you know what? Fuck me up, fam. Yeah. I don't think Abraxas was looking for some cash money, because he melts him.
Exactly.
He burns his ass up. Jack dips.
Yeah.
He fucking runs. But then this is where we break the format of the movie.
Yeah.
Right? Like, the last 5 minutes of this movie, we start to get into some existential shit for Jack.
Yeah.
Right? We get a flashback. At the beginning of the movie, we see this montage of shit happening with Jack.
He gets a little taste of hell at the end.
Yeah. He starts to go through like a lot of the events that we saw early in the movie.
Right. Distorted.
But now distorted, right? We see
big ass worm.
in the usual late night host deals with animals thing. The lady who's playing like a caveman,
right?
She's like doing the scene, and he's just like, no, this is not right.
Yeah.
The lady spinning the wheel, and it's like the watch, like the spirals, right? So he himself is spiraling out of control here.
Yeah. And
this is where I think we're intended to interpret this as he is understanding this is because of this deal he struck.
So how much does this movie of the events that we didn't see on screen that led to this, is it for certain that A, he and June had something like secretly romantic going on? A, B, is it for certain that like he made some sort of like deal with the Illuminati to try to become Johnny Carson?
So that is the way I've seen it be talked about from like even David himself as the guy who plays Jack.
Yeah.
He does say like Jack did make this deal, but he did not know that the sacrifice would be
His wife.
Madeline.
Gotcha.
Like, it's not until he is at this point in the movie
That he gets it.
that he goes, oh shit, this is the sacrifice they talked about.
He just had to make a grave sacrifice.
Yeah, because at the beginning of the movie, like I was saying, they're like signing a thing, and someone goes like, "Oh, he just signed a 5-year deal, 5-year deal with UPN or whatever."
UBS.
UBS, and someone goes, "Oh, Jack, what did you sacrifice to get here?"
Yeah,
and it just ends.
Yeah.
And then you move to the next scene, and then at the end here, we see that scene again. You hear the exact same line, and then it cuts to the guy who's like picking up the deal.
The Anton LaVey looking guy.
Yeah, and he says like, "Oh, Jack's greatest sacrifice is yet to come."
Right.
And I think it's at that moment that he goes, "Fuck."
Yeah.
This is what that is.
Yeah.
I don't think that it is ever actually Madeline's ghost.
No.
Haunting him.
Yeah.
I know people can read it as that. I think it could be interpreted as that.
It could just,
because I mean we see her.
The manifestations
but
of the demon.
It's A manifestation of his guilt, or B, it's Abraxas again just fucking with him.
Similarly, in Hill House, is Carla Gugino, when she's like haunting, is that the mom, or is that just Hill House being Hill House? You know what I'm saying? Because I was like, I feel like because like once we talk about this, like it's something else that you've seen from these kinds of movies before, where like the haunting thing isn't really the person, it's the evil
thing,
it's the evil entity.
I'm not sure. I'll have to rewatch Hill House this spooky season because it's a fantastic show.
It is. But I think that's what my mind went back to. I was like, it's one of these cases where like it has taken the form of someone.
Well, my reading on this is it takes this form because it needs Jack to complete his deal, which is at the end of the movie, we get this scene of so Jack relives essentially his ritual with the Grove. We see the owl.
Right.
You know, the person in the owl costume, which is the logo for the Night Owls show. Then we see Jack visiting Minnie at the hospital. And the Minnie goes, "Well, you did this to me.
Yeah.
At least put me out of my misery."
Yeah.
I don't think that's something that ever actually happened.
No.
In their life. Again, this is like a manifestation of his guilt.
Right.
But it's also, the way I'm seeing it is Abraxas using the sacrifice of Minnie,
right,
to guilt Jack into sacrificing Lily with a dagger.
And also, just demons like to fuck with people.
They do.
Yeah.
But I think it's one of those things where getting Jack to do the stabbing of Lily probably would not happen unless he was being manipulated into thinking he's putting Minnie
out of her misery,
therefore completing the ritual. Because at the end of the movie, you see that thing at the bottom that says like, "So it is done."
Yeah.
Right. So like that is what the entity wanted at the end. That is the final sacrifice.
I think this is the cool thing about having a demon as a villain, is because, like, in other fantasy or sci-fi, like you run the risk of like making your big villain just like too into like evil for evil's sake. And you're like, this is like cheesy. But when it's a demon, like that demon can be as big of an asshole as your imagination like allows you.
Yeah.
And we don't have to, and we're like, like that's what demons be demons.
Demons be demons.
Yeah.
You're able to give them as much rope as you want,
right,
as both creator and as the person consuming the media.
They could have the stupidest, like most convoluted plan because they just want to fuck with you.
Sometimes they just want to have fun.
Yeah, they're in it for the long haul.
Yeah. Man, this movie's great. The biggest thing I think that happened with this movie when it was coming out was the whole thing with the AI. I don't know. Have you heard any of the AI controversy when it was coming out?
Yeah.
So during the movie, there's like a couple of splash cards that pop up that say like, "We'll be right back."
Yeah.
Apparently those were made with AI. The movie was in production before the strikes even happened.
Yeah.
When AI was a big thing. The this was like around the time when everybody was fucking around
with AI.
with AI. So people were up in arms about this. People were like, "Let's boycott this movie."
So, finish first, and then I'll give my opinion.
I think that while the use of AI can be controversial,
Mm-hmm.
in this $150,000 movie, having the people at the effect department generate some shitty images and then tweak them themselves, I'm sorry, that is not enough for me to be like, I'm going to not support all the other people involved in this movie.
So this is where that's an efficient way of saying what I'm about to say. I think at the grand scheme of things, like I'd rather be mad about Carrie Fisher and Peter Cushing's faces being able to be used for like their entirety, which actually leads to like not casting new new actors for a role. B, look, like we're teachers. We can celebrate the fact that we can write rubrics with AI. Mm-hmm. We can do entire 504s and IEPs generated by AI. My wife, when I was buying our engagement ring, she's like, get an ethically sourced diamond. I did not get an ethically sourced anything, but I'm not gonna pay twice the price for the fucking rock, right? I think this is similar. I think we have to AI needs to be regulated. It's also out of the bag. I don't think you can avoid these I don't think you can avoid it being used to create these individual simplistic-ish graphic cards.
And also all right, be honest. If I hadn't mentioned that these things were AI,
I wouldn't have noticed.
They were on screen 3 seconds tops.
Yeah.
And I know that if I sit here and go 1, 2, 3, it sounds like a lot of time.
Right.
But it's really not. So I don't know. I just feel like in by the grand scheme of things, again, like they said, they come out and said, we did that back when AI was a silly little thing.
Yeah.
Our intention was not to not
take
pay
jobs.
Someone to do this. Our effects team, which is who we hired, who would normally do this anyway, they did this.
But this is what technology does. It allows us to more efficiently do some things that we couldn't do without it.
Yeah.
And sometimes that comes at the casualty of some people's jobs. But here, so next to Javier, on his right-hand side, there's a Pokeball shaped like a Bulbasaur. That was...
it's 3D printed.
That is 3D printed. I got it at a local fair, right? So because of the 3D printer, right, it's now much easier for for Joe Blow here in Aurora, Illinois, to basically illegally sell Pokemon merch, right? That wasn't possible without the 3D printer. You just stick it in the hole. I'm not going to give any context to the millions of audience. But that's it. It allows us to do things that we couldn't do before.
Anyway,
we still need to regulate it before it takes all of our jobs at once. But it is going to make some things obsolete, and that's just a fact of science and technology.
I should print one of these.
Yeah, they're cool.
They're very cool.
They're cool.
Top heavy, but cool.
Yeah.
There you go. But yeah, and I do think that. Yeah, it's shitty when they want to do something I can't remember what company. It may have been OpenAI who was trying to replicate Scarlett Johansson's voice for their AI after she very clearly said no.
Yeah.
That, I think, is very unethical.
Yes.
Something like this, which happened before a lot of the stipulations were even written. Yeah. As to how AI can be used in a SAG-AFTRA union production. I just think it's almost kind of goes against your own cause of wanting to support a small creator.
Yeah.
When the small creator is using their means to do what they can
to elevate their work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And granted, like I said, it doesn't look great. If you actually look
but
at them,
I loved it. It doesn't look great, but I thought they were nifty.
But they are, yeah. And they're quirky and goofy
Yeah.
looking, like the little skeletons and the pumpkins and the owl on the TV.
Right.
Like they look cool. But if you actually look at them, which is like unfortunately what happened to me because everybody was writing fucking articles about it.
Yeah.
Like if you look at them, you go, oh yeah, that skeleton's got fucked up hands.
Yeah.
Or the owl has droopy eyes or
Yeah.
whatever. So, but it's one of those things that because it was so prevalent when the movie came out, and like I was listening to like reviews about it and discussions about it, like it's a lot. Unfortunately, what a lot of people fucking focused on, and I think that is a detriment to the movie. That on its own, if you take those 9 seconds of screen grabs,
Right.
is a very good movie that I'm still on the border of really, really liking it and loving it.
Yeah.
Like, I think I love it, even though it does have a few things that I'm like, ooh, this could be
Better.
better. But I'm not throwing the baby out with the bathwater
right.
on this.
When there's a lot of baby.
It's a lot of baby,
There's a
so
lot of
much baby.
Yeah.
Baby, this movie is good.
Yeah.
I don't even know what percentage this would be. Made a 12 million on a 150,000.
Jesus.
Yeah, which I know people say 12 million for a movie does not sound like a lot, but on such a tiny budget,
That was $150,000 only?
150,000 only.
That's nothing.
It's nothing.
Dude, middle class people's stock portfolios are
Katie
worth
and
more
I
than
make a little bit more than this movie makes a year.
That's amazing that was $150,000.
Yeah. And
I'm
again,
blown
and people and it was critically liked.
Shitty houses.
My shitty house cost $4,000 less.
Shitty, like awful houses are worth more than this movie.
Yeah. Wow. And you could bring so much joy to so many people.
Yeah.
So like, I don't know. Those people, I'm sorry. You know, I think this is where I'm drawing my line in the sand. People who were upset about the A on this movie can go fuck off.
I think so.
All right, friend. Thank you so much for talking about this movie with me. I had rules of fun. I've been wanting to talk about this movie since it came out. I saw it in March 21st, right before I left for Mexico.
It was a joy. It was quite a joy to see.
I'm glad you liked it. Yeah. Up until now, this should be out soon. I don't know when you want to record for our next movie called The Deliverance, which is a wild movie, by the way.
That's the Glenn Close one, right?
The Glenn Close movie with a questionable line that made you go, ah.
I'm ready.
I'm ready. All right, everybody. Thank you so much for listening. Make sure you share with your friends. Tell everybody about how good we are doing this thing that nobody ever does.
So good.
So good. Until next time, this has been the Cine-Scoots Movie Show. He has been Thano.
He has been Javier.
Bye.
Bye.